I had a question come up recently on one of my Reddit posts asking, how do you clip ship parts into each other? So I figured I'd come up with a quick tutorial and try to explain it. There are two main methods that I use. The first one is the easiest. If you can find a piece that has a variation or can be flipped, effectively, if you can change the state of a piece while you have it selected, that's going to be the easiest thing to clip. So for example, if I wanted to clip this Shroud Cap A into this Deimos cowling, I would select, hold, and drag this piece where I want it to end up. And while I have it held, I will change its state. In this case, I'll flip it until it ends up exactly how I want it, and then unselect it, which by default on keyboard is escape. And because this Shroud Cap A has a valid snapping point unique to this Deimos cowling that it's clipped into, it will stay there. What I mean by that is, if both of these snapping points, which are the only two snapping points that are valid for this, or would be valid for the Shroud Cap A, are occupied, then I cannot clip or snap or put this here. No matter what I do, it won't stay there. But you can use any snapping point of any piece, really, as long as there's a connection, it'll work. They just all have to have unique snapping points to attach themselves to the rest of the ship. The other method I use is by duplicating items. So effectively, if you duplicate an item, which by default is Control-G, hover over select something and use the duplicate hotkey, the game will push the duplicate into a place that it thinks is valid. Normally that's connected to a nearby snapping point. In this case, this went up. So you can use this to push pieces into other pieces. Right, so if I wanted to push this Shroud Companionway into this Deimos cowling for whatever reason, I would hover, duplicate, and sometimes the game will push it in a direction you don't want to. In that case, block the snapping point that it pushed to, and then go back to your scaffolding and duplicate again, and confirm. As long as you don't move your view around at all, while you have the game is trying to figure out where this piece is going to end up, and accept it just now, then you're good to go. And now you have these two pieces snapped into each other. One thing to keep in mind when you're doing this is while you're editing your ships, say I have this shield hidden underneath this Shroud cowling, right? And then I don't like this hab anymore, I'm gonna get rid of it, and I'm gonna get a Nova hab, right? I'm gonna put this Nova hab in there. Now, because I've removed this snapping point for the shield, a lot of times it'll just be floating there. In this case it worked, but a lot of times this shield will get left behind and not be connected to anything because I have it clipped into another piece. So that's something to keep in mind when you're editing your ships or building your ships. The best way to find those pieces, if you have the error that says you have disconnected modules, is to double click part of your ship and it'll automatically select every piece that's connected to that piece, and then just drag that entire selected area away, and you'll see sometimes things will get left behind, and you just have to figure out how to clip them back in or reattach them however you want. Another thing to keep in mind is if you're clipping a piece through a walkable or habitable area, any part of the piece that's clipped through will render within that walkable area, so you might be blocking part of your cockpit or something like that. That's something to keep in mind. But this duplication glitch is great if you want to move an engine up further and you've got too thin of a sort of aperture that you want to slide it into, right? Normally I can't place this engine right on top of another engine like this because it considers it invalid, but if I were to duplicate this a couple times and then delete the one I don't want, I can then stack engines like this. So quick little tutorial, I hope it helps you, and happy shipbuilding.